Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest podcast episode. This time around, we've got a special guest called Leon Ravenna. Leon is a global CISO at OpenLane, who are under the Car Global brand based out in the US. We're diving into some hot topics today, like the rise of the combined CISO and CIO role, and the ongoing discussions about CISOs and the corporate boards. Plus, we'll touch on how new regulations are shaking up in the cybersecurity scene. Let's get stuck in. Thanks for joining us, Leon. Secure Insights on the Friday afternoon. You've got a great CV and track record. You're a global CISO, former CIO, but I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and go through your journey, if that's okay.
Sure, happy to be here. So I've been doing technology for 38 years. I was doing NetWare and was a master CNE probably before most of your listeners were born. So there is that. I've covered about every space of technology, built data centers, stuff like that. Started doing security back in about 2003. Been doing it ever since. I've been the CISO here at OpenLane for a little over 7 years, and during that time, I also picked up some shared services / CIO responsibilities. One of the things is, you've done stuff along a very long career, and so you've done stuff in the past. So I took that over for a little bit. Just released those about 2 months ago to focus back on security, privacy, and compliance.
Okay, cool. And we spoke before. I mean, one of that segues nicely into the CISO and the CIO function, and we're seeing a little bit increasingly actually where some organizations are doubling up with one individual taking both of those roles together. And I know that you've also had that role as well. That's your role, I think, with OpenLane. So with that, I mean, what are the challenges of holding those two roles collectively, or the advantages of holding those roles collectively?
Yeah, there's some advantages and disadvantages. I mean, the disadvantages, you have the two sides of your head always talking back and forth. And trying to balance on the IT side, I want everything open. I want pipes as wide open as they can be. On the security side, I want them as closed as they can be. So it's balancing some of that. I think what's starting to happen, and I know 3 or 4 folks that have a dual role right now that came out of the CISO world. Typically, the CISOs you see today have had broad IT experience, and as companies are consolidating, they're saying, can I do this with one person, and or in highly regulated environments, does it make more sense for me to have that CISO kind of lead role that is security focused, security first? Now, is it going to be that for every company? Surely not. Actually, in 2016, I coined a phrase called CISPRO, where I expected that people would, in smaller companies under about $1 billion in revenue, would have security, privacy, and risk. And so it's just seeing a little bit of that kind of play itself. I don't think in large organizations you can do that because there's just so much happening. But really, under about $1 billion, I think you start to see some consolidation there over time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually. Do you think sort of the 1 billion plus corporate organizations will go that way? Because there's a, like you say, with the new regulations coming through, with the type of incidents that we're seeing out there, and in terms of, so when you or generally speaking, then how does that look if an attack happens, an incident happens? How do you kind of separate the two functions?
Yeah, so in my role, having both CISO and CIO responsibilities, I had identity, network, endpoint, things like that. And when there's an incident, the the security side of the brain takes over. And we have the way that we work today at OpenLane, and it's we've done a lot to build the relationships, and so in a lot of cases the CISO is you can't do that. You just can't do that. And our perspective is at the end of the day you have to make money, and so how do we do things securely with some guardrails that make sense? And one of the things that we have with our development group is if there's some big 0-day that comes out, I have the card that says, okay, I need everybody to go make sure that we're good. Okay. But the relationship side of that is let's talk about what things we actually have to do. Not, it's not me coming and saying, here's every single thing in the world that you have to fix. But it's the things that are meaningful. And so it's kind of balancing, the everything open to the everything closed, and where do you meet in the middle? And I think really a lot of the questions that you'll end up having, people end up having about CIOs and CISOs is it comes down to relationship. You can be the smartest guy in the room, but if you haven't built that relationship over time, you're in trouble. So
yeah, okay. That moves us nicely actually into that. One of the big topics at the moment in the market is the CISO and the board relationship. How does that look to you?
I come at it from a little bit different perspective. The way that I approach things is very servant leadership oriented. So my job is to serve the board and to serve my company. And so I believe that it's incumbent on me to help build that relationship. And I've had this discussion as late as Wednesday night of this week. We had a dinner with about 15 local security folks. There's a little bit of kind of victimhood in the security space. I should be talking to the board. Well, there's a different set of expectations when you talk to the board. You can't talk in tech language. Mm-hmm. You need to talk in dollars and cents and what impacts are. And so there's a lot of learning that people have to do in order to have those conversations with the board. And I've been doing it for almost 10 years at 2 different companies, and I learn something every quarter. I keep going back to, I can't tell them things, for instance, product names. Product names in security are silly. Okay. And it doesn't do them any good if I tell them that we're using, XYZ tool. Doesn't matter. They want to know what the impacts are. And so I have tried to cultivate those relationships. So if they have a question, they can call me, outside of board meetings. I was on vacation last year and had a call from the person who runs our risk committee. He was actually doing some cyber preparation and had a question, and more than happy to talk to him, because the more they know, they become both my biggest ally and my biggest fear. Because it comes with knowledge. So a lot of people don't know what security folks do. And it's kind of they have they know you're doing something, but the more that I can help educate them on what we do and what we're trying to do to make sure that they can fulfill their job as a board member makes sense. Now, when you look at it from, do I want to be, a member of the board? That's not really my role. My role is to inform. At some point, does it make sense to sit on other boards from a security standpoint? It may. I have a buddy who sits on 6 different boards, and he's trying to do everything he can to get off of them. just because it's the stress that goes with it as well. So I think there's, I've talked to people before who say, I absolutely have to report to the board. Got it. There's a different set of expectations that they will have than what you may be thinking. And while it's great to be able to say, at a cocktail party that you report to the board, that there's much different things that come with it. And again, I've hit this a couple of times, but much different expectations.
And when you're looking at sort of 1, 2, 3 billion plus organizations where you ultimately will report into the board, and cyber information security has come on a long way the last, say, 10, 15 years. But do you see there being a big gap with experience and knowledge and know-how of CISOs today that end up being CISOs part of their career journey and whatnot?
Yeah, if you break it into two pieces, so the reporting to the board and then the being on boards, kind of into two separate camps. The reporting to the board, it's understanding what people need to know, and part of my job is education. Part of my job is I report into the risk committee. And the risk committee is not looking for, hey, everything's, peaches and cream. They're looking for, hey, what are the issues? And so, my report to them is not always, hey, everything's great. It's here's what we're struggling with. Here's where we're good. Here's, and so it's being comfortable with being transparent. And telling them, here's what the state of the state is. There's a lot of regulatory pressure that's coming on CISOs in particular. I referenced a dinner we had Wednesday night, and that was the first topic of conversation, is kind of the U.S. SEC guidelines. And I talked to another buddy of mine who was somewhere different in the country, had a dinner the same night, and that was their first topic. So people are very interested in, doing the right thing, making sure that they are being transparent, and then trying to make sure that, the company, understands that they're being transparent. So what they're going to tell you is not always, like I said, it's not always good news. It ends up being some of the softer skills. I a long time ago, I had a CFO a number of companies ago tell me, hey, you're a really smart guy, but when people don't track with you, you get mad. You get visibly mad. It's like, okay, that's a learning opportunity. That's very much a learning opportunity. And those are things that you have to be willing to take back and understand, when you replay in your mind how a risk committee or an audit committee meeting went, what can I do better? I tend to look at them maybe the wrong way, but kind of as an interview. My job is to help sell what we're doing, but make sure that I'm selling in an absolutely transparent fashion. And then the flip side is, do I think people, CISOs should be on boards? I think over time, but I also think that when you look at the CISO space, it's been around for about 25 years in total, and I think over time you will see that. But I think right now, the way that people kind of perceive it is, for every board member, that's a chip that they're playing. Okay. And when you look at someone who's in the security space, that may be viewed as a singular chip that a company can't afford for their board. And so it's broadening out a little bit to, my background is IT, it's security, it's privacy, it's compliance. Broadening out, instead of saying, well, I'm a security guy and I should be, on your board, because there's responsibilities, there's fiduciary responsibilities that come with it, and there are regulatory responsibilities. So, I think there is the kind of the notion that, yeah, absolutely, it should be there. And then there's the notion that, again, be careful what you sign up for.
Yeah.
But I think, until the time, I forget what the percentage of Fortune 500s that actually have um, security expertise on their board. It is around 50%. Okay. That feels low given the state of the state. But, having that relationship, the way that we have done it is one of our board members went and took the NACD Carnegie Mellon kind of cyber class to educate himself. And that's very beneficial, and so it's, one of the things that comes of that is you can have kind of a deeper conversation. And for the person in my role, you can start to fall back into, okay, here's tools, here's terms, here's taxonomy that we would normally use, and they understand that. But at the end of the day, you aren't going to be successful by talking bits and bytes.
Yeah, and it's almost. I mean, we talk to a lot of CISOs and a lot that are on the board and who aren't as well. And I guess what we see and hear is that kind of executive leadership step up. And you just mentioned it, doing outside, courses, education, self-education, whether that's being funded with their current organisation or not. But that's something that a lot of people that we found that have gone on, a 4, 5, 6 day external course to, leave the CISO cap there, but bring in this is the board cap, this is how I need to present and talk, and this is the language I use, and then the ongoing, is it every month, is it every quarter that you report into, what does that need to look like, what's the preparation around that, and then the soft skills, the relationship stuff, which you brought up earlier on as well, because without that, pretty much.
Yeah, it's funny that almost everything that you do comes down to relationship.
Yeah.
I've probably had 3 conversations with outside vendors this week where the discussion is relationship, not being coin operated, and how do you help? I've helped a number of salespeople on here's how you sell to someone in security. Because they're getting bombarded day in, day out. Here's all the newest products. How do you decipher and filter through that? But I can count on one hand, the 20-year relationships that I have with sales guys, that they have looked at how do they make me successful and by extension make themselves successful. And again, whether it's whether it's board discussions, whether it's, personal discussion, it all comes down to building that relationship.
Yeah. And on the regulatory side, which you brought up, just touching on that then, what's your thoughts going forward over the next sort of 2 or 3 years? Like you mentioned, be careful what you sign up to.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to affect the landscape?
It will. It most definitely will. There are new regulations worldwide.
Yeah.
So you have GDPR in Europe. You have, on the privacy side, you have CCPA in California. You have NYDFS in New York. Yeah. You have several new things that are coming up in Europe around AI, around digital products. And I think these don't happen very often, these new regulations and laws. So they tend to follow kind of a pendulum. They swing hard one way, then they ultimately swing back towards the middle. And I think right now, like with the SEC regulations, people trying to figure out how do I make sure that we're doing what we need to do. And I think they will ultimately be good. They're always perceived as bad, but they're ultimately they're trying to help you be better as an organization. And I think that over time, it's that pendulum starts to center back. And it gets to be normal course. In the early 2000s, it was Sarbanes-Oxley, and it was, oh gosh, this is huge, and and then it's normal course of business.
Yeah.
And so I think there's the initial stage of, oh, I don't know how we're going to take care for this, and then over time it's like, okay, we've just built it into the cadence that we have to go. Now, there's going to be some interesting stuff that comes out around AI. There was just a new executive order on protecting people's personal data here in the U.S., and so there's going to be more regulation coming, and I think that people ignore that at their own peril.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you kind of say, well, we don't have to do that because, you know, they're going to go after Google or Meta or, you know, something like that. You know, I think you can use those regulatory pieces to help build a better program, and you know you're A, doing the right thing, but B, accommodating what you need to from a regulatory standpoint. So
yeah. So you use it as an advantage, but like you say, new phase. Like over the years, a lot of these big things have come in, and then over the next sort of 18 months or so, it starts to settle down a bit, doesn't it? Okay. So moving on to which we spoke about a little bit last time when we caught up, then Leon, hiring and different strategies for hiring, bringing people into the team, retention. That's a big thing. We've spoken about the fact that, you know, globally we're playing with the same pool of people a lot of the time. We're still trying to get the message out, sort of, you know, the next generation and emerging talent, people across transferable skills, all that kind of stuff. What's your experience and your approach in those things?
We may be a little bit unique. I don't really use recruiting firms to go hire people. I've actually, my team is not huge, but we've lost 2 people in the last 3 years, and one of the people that we lost came to us as an intern. She got her undergrad, she got her master's. And after a bit, she got a job that was double her current salary. That's a win. You know, that's a win no matter what. And so, you know, by virtue of what we do and how we do it, I use a lot of interns, but I don't use summer interns. I kind of have that program runs forever. You know, you come in as an intern. We've had 3 people that have been in over time looking at they're finishing their undergrads, and they're getting real world skills. So actual skills in tools and process. And then I run a group in Indiana where we try and filter people back out. If I don't have a job for them, we've actually hired 2 of them, and they've been great. We also look for people that don't have kind of the classic, you know, cyber skills. One of our best folks is a guy who came out of one of the call centers that was answering questionnaires for customers, and he understands the business so well. Mm-hmm. And he came to us. He started working. I have a group that does customer questionnaires, and he started working there. And then he said, "Hey, I want to go take some of these certifications," and he did. And now he runs part of our application security team. I mean, and you're looking for people that don't have those normal skill sets. Mm-hmm. I actually traveled to Israel in 2016, and we talked to some people at one of the aerospace companies, and they were taking people who had been, you know, doing something else, radar technician, something like that, for 20 years, and then teaching them cyber because they were valuable employees and they wanted to maintain them. So I think there's a lot of that. It's a little bit of a risk, but I think if people have the willingness to, hey, I'm going to go open a book, I'm going to go find out about this on my own. Those are the type of qualities that you have to have in the cyberspace. And we've been fortunate to be able to hire in that way. I've also been fortunate that I think on my security team I probably have 5 guys who are ex-military, and 2 of them are still in the reserves. You know, they're remarkably disciplined, and you know, and quite frankly, they are comfortable with, you know. Security is a lot of just sitting looking at spreadsheets, you know, quite frankly, and they're okay with that. You know, they're okay doing the job that they're tasked with, and because they grew up that way and found that they're disciplined, they show up for work, they do what they're supposed to. In most cases, they're remarkably humble, probably too humble, but it builds a very cohesive environment.
Yeah, I think if you can, like you say, the military policing backgrounds are great because they got that sort of mindset of, being interested what's happening, and they're trained that way as well. But we've run some programs before with some large organizations where they were looking to hire externally, where we sort of pointed them back internally again to other teams or functions where with some training, and as long as the individuals are prepared to undertake that training,
Yes.
it's more cost effective to do it that way, as long as they're willing to sort of jump on those transferable skills. And then it's a bit of a win-win. It's a win-win because people are entering into a new exciting industry, they're learning new skill sets.
It's the we can teach you cyber, we can teach you technology, but it's the qualities that people bring that, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. I want to learn. The biggest thing that going into cyber and into IT in general is, if you're not willing to be a lifelong learner, it's probably not the right role. I look at about 10 news sources a day, looking for what's happening on a macroeconomic and a global standpoint, and how that impacts us from a cyber standpoint. And that's aside from any of the technology stuff that I look at. But it's you have, if your goal in life is, I finished college and now I'm done learning, it's definitely the wrong place, because you will, every day you're learning, and you have to.
Yeah, so. It's a great industry, ever growing, ever changing. And most of the people that we speak to, when they start looking to change jobs, is because they want something different, they want something to learn, and cybersecurity, information security gives you that. So it's a great industry to get into. But like you say, as long as you want to keep learning, it's really key. So to finish off then, Leon, what would be we ask everybody this question, it's great. This is how we started the podcast originally, was to just get everybody, from all sorts of different cybersecurity backgrounds at all levels, just to share their journey and some stories. And ultimately, really what your biggest one piece of advice would be for the next generation, or anyone that wants to break into cybersecurity would be.
I think one of them we talked about, and I'll cover two, but it's being a lifelong learner. And the second is, much of my job, I've been doing this for 38 years, and much of it is very much like a plumber. You get paid to stand in muck all day long and figure stuff out. I can remember times in my career where, at 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning, I'm fishing cables underneath a Nortel phone switch for a big conversion we're doing. If you're not willing to roll up your sleeves and sometimes you got to sweep the floors. Sometimes you're building strategy, but you have to be comfortable at whatever you're doing, that you're doing it to the absolute best of your ability, because a lot of times, it's very much like parenting. My kids were always watching what I did, and people are always watching what you do. And so you have to be doing it to the best of your ability, as often, as close to 100% of the time as you can.
Yeah, good advice. Try to do everything with the highest level of excellence. You won't go far wrong, and like you say, combine that with being and wanting to be a lifelong learner, and it can give you a great experience, a great career, and like that great story of the internal chap who's now looking after your application security function. So fantastic, Leon, brilliant. Thank you very, very much for contributing and spending time to come on the podcast. It's been great having you. Really appreciate it.
Sure thing, happy to help.